Hello and welcome to the College Investor Audio Show. We are so glad you are here with us today as we take a look at how to actually use a 529 plan for trade school. Pretty great topic, but first I want to remind you before we get into it, hit subscribe on this podcast so you're always up to date when we post new content, and we do regularly. You can also follow us on all over social media. We're pretty much anywhere you are. Just search for The College Investor and you'll find us. You can also take a look at all the resources, all the stuff we have going on right on our website, thecollegeinvestor.com. It is an amazingly robust website. All right, let's get to it now. How to use a 529 for trade school. If you or your family saved money for your education within a 529 plan, good on you. You can use those funds to pay for qualified education expenses without any tax penalty whatsoever. For students who opt to attend a trade school instead of a traditional college or university, it's natural to question whether or not you're going to be able to use those funds in your 529 to cover those costs. So, let's explore what the funds in your 529 can be used for. Can you use a 529 to pay for trade school? Short answer, yep. Long answer, the funds in your 529 can be used to pay for an eligible trade school. Although not all vocational schools are actually eligible, many of them are. So which ones are? If you have a 529, you can use the funds to pay for your education at certain vocational schools. Qualifying trade and vocational trade school programs have to be sponsored by schools that are eligible for Title IV federal student aid. In order to determine if the institution you have in mind accepts federal aid, search for a federal school code on the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, FAFSA. Although it does require a little bit of research, you can often find a vocational or trade school offering the skill you want to learn that is eligible for your 529 funds. For example, in Ohio, the Ohio Department of Higher Education operates 50 career centers across the state that are eligible for 529 fund use. Are apprenticeships eligible? Yeah, an apprenticeship is often a viable alternative to a traditional trade school or vocational school path. So generally, an apprenticeship is a long-term, paid working program that includes both on-the-job training and classroom instruction. In some cases, you can use 529 funds to cover those expenses related to that apprenticeship program, but the apprenticeship program must be registered and certified with the Secretary of Labor to qualify. What expenses can you cover with this amazing 529 thingy? So if you're attending an eligible trade school or apprenticeship program, you can use the funds in your 529 to cover certain things. Some qualified expenses include tuition, school fees, textbooks, supplies and equipment required for attendance, including tools that you need, computers, room and board expenses, all that stuff. If you use the funds in your 529 to pay for a non-qualified expense, you're just going to have to pay federal income tax on that money and a 10% penalty on the earnings, which can be pretty steep. So here's how to fund any gaps you have. The good news for trade school students with the 529 is that you'll likely be able to use your funds to pay for your education. In some cases, you might not even need to reconsider which trade school you choose to attend in order to use your 529. Depending on your situation, your account may or may not have enough funds available to cover all of your expenses. And if you can't pay for all of those expenses using a 529, you're going to need to come up with some other ways you can pay for the remaining costs. So here, let's just a quick outline of the best ways to fund the remaining costs from most ideal to least efficient. So they are in order. The most ideal, scholarships. When you win a scholarship, you can use the money for school. You're not going to have to pay it back either. So try to apply for at least 50, yes, that's 50 scholarships to land as much money as possible for school. You can use our guide of scholarships by state to help you find scholarships to apply for. Grants. Grants are just another type of financial award that you're not going to have to pay back. It's amazing. Your savings. If you've worked during high school or have funds kind of tucked away from holiday presents, consider tapping into those funds to cover your educational costs. Your earnings. It's usually possible to work while you attend school. Even if you can't work and attend class at the same time, it is often possible to work a summer job to build up funds to cover your next semester. Don't overlook your earning potential as a way to pay for school. Employer tuition reimbursement programs. Some employers offer tuition reimbursement as a perk of working for them. A few employers offering tuition reimbursement include Carhartt, Carvana, and NVIDIA. When looking for a job, it might be helpful to include employers who offer this perk in your search for sure. Help from relatives. If you have relatives who want to help pay for school, that's always a welcome source of funds. And then, and only then, student loans. Yes, it's possible to pay for trade school with student loans, but since you'll have to repay the funds with interest, these should be treated as a last option. The last resort. Most people think first. No. Last. You don't want to have debt, right? Okay, so when it comes to paying for school, don't be afraid to get creative. You don't have to pay for it with debt. Generally, it's a good idea to limit the amount of loans you take on. Generally meaning, like, always? It's always a good idea to limit the amount of debt. Why? Because after graduation, you'll be very grateful you did everything you could to avoid taking out more loans than you needed to. The bottom line? Yep, it's possible to use a 529 to fund your trade school education. Although there are limitations on which vocational schools are eligible, many are. So just kind of do a little bit of research before signing up for classes, just to make sure you're able to use the funding source you had in mind to pay for school without any penalties. And that is our show for today. Thanks so much for stopping by. Hope you learned something new and it just kind of was helpful to you. If you want to find out more about all of this stuff, like 529 funds, how you can use them, what you can use them on, and so many resources on 529 plans, you can find it and a whole lot more at thecollegeinvestor.com. Also, we'd love to get to know you better. If you have any comments or questions, concerns, anything at all, we'd love to help you. You can follow us all over social media at The College Investor. Thanks so much for stopping by today, and we'll talk to you again real soon.